What up, y'all? Stefan at Berkshire Bike and Board here, and today I'm going to talk about how to set up your mountain bike suspension, specifically Specialized bikes. Today I have in front of me my Specialized Kenevo SL Expert, and I'm going to go over how to make sure the suspension is set up for my weight and riding style. Why do we want to set up our suspension? A couple of factors. We want to make our ride smoother, more comfortable, we want more traction, and therefore, when all those things come into play, we can be faster. In the end, that's our goal. So the first thing we want to do before we start setting up our suspension is make sure our compression is all the way open. That way we're starting fresh. And on this suspension, we have a firm lever, which we're going to open all the way up. I've already backed off my compression rebound clicks and as well on my fork. The difference between compression versus rebound: compression is when you are pushing the fork through the suspension. We want to control how that goes through the travel. We want it to control. We don't want it to go too fast or too slow. Vice versa. Rebound is how fast the travel comes back. And once again, we want to control it. We don't want it too fast where it bounces us, and vice versa. We don't want it to come too slow, because if it's too slow, it will pack up as you hit multiple stutter bumps, and therefore your suspension is not working optimally. So where we find how to set up a suspension, Specialized does a phenomenally good job on this. They're one of the manufacturers out there that make it really simple. And the first place we go is go to specialized.com. You can find it multiple different ways. What I find is the easiest, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there's a resource right there. It says suspension calculator. Click on the suspension calculator. First thing it's going to ask you, what's the model? I click Kenevo SL. From there, I click the model. This is the Expert, because depending on the spec, the suspension is going to be a little different. Then it asks me to put in my weight. I click in my weight, I click in my height, and then I hit the submit, and then it gives me all of the output. It gives me the data. So you're going to need three things to set up your suspension on your bicycle. Number one, shock pump. What I'm using is a Fox HP digital pump. You're going to need your bicycle, of course, and a way to hold it up, lean it up against a wall, a stand, something that you can be able to walk away from it. So I have my shock pump here. I'm going to start by setting up my front shock pressure. According to the suspension calculator, I have 87 PSI in my fork and 197 in my rear shock. So you start by taking off your valve cap, which exposes a Schrader cap. Thread your shock pump on. Go till it stops. Now my gauge is reading. I'm at 89. I'm basically there. This shock pump, or all shock pumps, have a bleeder, so I'm just going to back it off a few to get to my 87. And I went too far, so I'm just going to give it one pump to get back to 87. Perfect. Now, taking it off, you'll hear a little bit of generally not losing any noticeable real pressure. Most of that sound is coming from the hose. Then I go to the rear, and once again, what you should do is cycle the suspension a couple times, just make sure everything's good. And I should probably have done that on the front, but it's all good. This is my bike, so the suspension is pretty much already set up. Thread it on. So once again, it's a little high, it's 206, we're gonna bring it down. 187. And once again, this is just a guide. This is not the end all. The idea is that once you're familiar with how to do this, you wanna play with it, tweak it, and that's gonna be even more pertinent on the next phase of this, which is adjusting your compression and your rebound. Rebound controls, bottom right leg, unthread the cap. You've got two dials here. You have HSR, high-speed rebound, LSR, low-speed rebound. My suspension calculator on the Specialized website tells me 5 and 6, so I'm going to go 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm not going to put it back on because I'm going to play with it. I'm going to make sure it feels good. And now I'm going to do compression. So like the rebound, we have a high and a low speed. The inner is low speed LSC. Out is HSC, high speed compression. So according to the Specialized calculator, we do 10 clicks of the low speed compression, and that's 10. You feel the indentations, that one's not as audible. And then the high speed, it's 5. Once again, it's indentations, you'll feel it. And that's to set the suspension compression. If you're not using a specialized bicycle and you just need to kind of figure this out on your own without these numbers, some really simple guidelines are compression. Every fork now has an O-ring, and the way you can set compression, meaning how much air pressure, if you don't have that number, is via sag. And so once you're sitting on the bike, you want that O-ring to roughly compress 25% of the suspension travel, which is the exposed stanchion of the leg. And you can adjust that. You may take a few more times to play with it, sit on it, take some air out, put some air in, whichever it takes. And then compression and rebound. For years before I had a suspension calculator, I was doing this by feel. And a lot of that would be just pushing the fork up and down just like that, and then playing with it. A lot of times while I'm riding, I'm doing this. I'm closing it down till it's too slow, or vice versa. Trying to make it faster. And just a real simple tip is, the idea is that you should be able to push your suspension and let go. And if the rebound is just right, the rebound should just feel like the front tire's unweighting. If it's too slow, which it almost looked like it was a little too slow there, I might actually speed it up for my personal preference. But once again, it's total personal preference. This is just a guide. Other manufacturers do the same thing. There'll be a suspension calculator. And also, of course, Fox's website will give you all of that suspension calculator information. So if you don't get it from your bike manufacturer, you can get it from the fork manufacturer. Now moving to the rear of the bike, there is no high and low speed. There's just rebound and compression. And for this shock, which is the Float X2, you need a 3mm Allen key, which another nice feature of my bicycle here. This thing will pop open. So to adjust the compression, you do need a tool. My bike has a what's called a SWAT. The tool is built right into my head tube, so it's always there, which is great. 3mm, and then I go down and adjust. My rebound is 7 and my compression is 11, so drop her in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So to adjust the compression, I need a 3mm Allen key, which I have here in my SWAT box. Pull out my Allen key. And my rebound, 7 clicks. Compression is 11 clicks. Cycle it, see how it feels. Feels pretty good. Last but not least, remember to put your caps back on. Always seems to be an issue. We always forget to put these caps back on. So just reminding you, do it. Put both caps back on. And now, one last thing, I went over suspension setup for the fork when you don't have the calculator. For the rear, all shocks also have O-rings. If you don't have an O-ring, you can use a zip tie. For the rear shock setup, once again, play with the compression, the rebound till you get it right. But as far as how much air pressure to put it in, we want roughly a third sag. So you want that shock to sag roughly with your body weight when you're sitting on it, a third of the shock. That's probably a quarter. So if I actually put all my weight on it, you want roughly a third of sag, and that should get you going. I'm Stefan from Berkshire Bike and Board. That's how to set up your suspension. Once again, thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button for more content like this. Thank you.